Part 7. The Suicide Mission. Chapter 1. The next day came before anyone fell asleep. Hours passed in what seemed like minutes. Every time Alex opened his eyes, 4 turned to 5. 5 turned to 11. 11 turned to 6. Alex did what he could to get as much sleep as he could. He assumed everyone else was either trying to sleep or preparing for the night. He forced himself to let Layla loose so he could shower, but she followed him in, not yet willing to let him go. They kissed and washed under the hot stream of water, then made their way out and dressed. "It's going to rain. You should wear your combat jacket," Alex advised. Layla nodded and put on one of Alex's smaller black jackets from when he was younger. She strapped it tight, then tightened her belt around her waist. Alex threw on his own jacket over a torn black shirt and opted for his fatigue pants rather than jeans. Layla did the same. When they left the room, they were met by several members of the rest of the team. "Where's Tommy and Brandon?" Alex asked Ellen. "Tommy's giving Brandon a ride to the outskirts of the Morrison patrol zone. He wanted to find a good spot before the rest of us get there." "If Tommy's not back soon," Alex started. "Come on, kid, have some faith," the driver's voice cut in over the comm. "Ice Fox is on the ground. I'm returning to base." "I'll give it another hour before we move. The sun should be down by then," Alex replied. "You got it. We'll meet you in the garage, kid," Dellen replied. Alex nodded, then looked over at Otto. The wraps where the bullets hit him were protruding out his tank top. "You gonna be alright, big man?" "I can still move and hold a gun, Alex. I'm not about to let you do this without me." "You're made of stronger stuff than most, Otto," Alex said. "Damn right. Now let's go kill that son of a bitch," the convict replied. Alex made way towards the stairs. Janet followed him and Layla down with several additional items for the team. "Armor-piercing rounds, hollow tips, and as many stingers as I could manage. And there's this." Janet handed Alex a pistol clip with a design that looked like Eli's pistol. "What's this?" he asked, taking it and placing it inside his jacket with the gun. "I call them cutters. You know how stingers have sharp edges on them? Cutters have bladed lines on the exterior of the bullet. It took some innovation, but whatever you don't kill will sure as hell wish you did." "Violent innovation. I like it," Layla stated. "Me too," Alex stated as he examined one of the rounds. Engraved below the bladed lines was a simple name: John Morrison. The trio walked into the garage as Alex loaded the clip into Eli's pistol. Tommy pulled in next to the other 2 BMWs as they entered. His car still looked as fresh as its 2 sisters. "Brandon told me he'll let us know when he's in position," the driver said. "Give all the other cars another once-over," Janet demanded. Tommy knew better than to argue and went to give them a walk-by. "Tyler, are those detonators rigged?" Alex shouted over to his friend. Tyler was engaged in cleaning his rifle and watching the rain fall. A cigarette dangled out the side of his mouth, dropping ash on his pants. "Both sets are rigged, Alex. Just doing some last-minute prep here." "We're leaving in an hour." "Nice work," Alex said. Tyler nodded and went back to working on his rifle. Across from him, Talia and Mikhail were sharpening their blades. "You 2 ready?" he asked as he paced over. "Indeed," Talia replied. "Several generations of mistakes will end today, Alexander," Mikhail added. "Oh, when you put it like that, it sounds a lot bigger than it is," Alex said sarcastically. "We will be taking out one of the most powerful men left in the world, Alex," Mikhail replied. Alex smiled and slapped Mikhail on the shoulder. "I think you've got humor. We'll have to work on sarcasm next. I'm glad to have you both along for this ride." "I am happy you have accepted me into this group, Alex," Talia said. "As am I. I have learned, and perhaps relearned, much about people," Mikhail said. Alex smiled and extended a hand towards Mikhail. The shadow responded by shaking it with his own. Ezra was the only man left he hadn't yet spoken with. The Israeli was puffing a cigarette in a long leather coat, his helmet at his side and both scatterguns locked at his waist. He was just outside the garage door, staring down the alleyway in the rain. "How are you feeling, bounty hunter?" Alex asked. "It's quite interesting, isn't it, Sentinel? Almost a month ago, we were fighting each other in the ruined streets of London because I was hunting you. Now, if I don't help kill the man who gave me that contract, I become hunted," Ezra replied. Nothing interesting about that. You took the wrong contract, and Morrison hates being crossed, Alex countered. Do you believe killing him will change anything? The world will always have use of people such as me. If you have a point, then make it, Alex replied. Men and women who aren't afraid of doing the evils other men and women like Morrison wish will always find work, because there will always be those types of people. So if it's all hopeless, why are you even here? Alex asked. I'm here because you didn't kill me. Because if I don't help you, John Morrison will. That doesn't erase the fact that there are others like him. You believe you'll solve the world's problems here, but Morrison is just one of many, yes? Ezra explained. Then we'll fight them too. No one deserves what has been wrought here, anywhere. Alex shot back. Ezra turned to look at Alex. He wore a smug, all-knowing expression on his face as he looked down his nose at the other man. The entire council's in that man's pocket. One must wonder what they've done, what they will do to deserve the same fate as John Morrison, Ezra explained. If they prove to be like him, then they'll deserve the fate they reap, Alex answered. Then you better start collecting body bags, Ezra replied, flicking his cigarette to the ground and crushing it under his boot. Alex stared at Ezra until the bounty hunter walked away. The Israeli never gave him a glance back. The hour passed rapidly. Everyone assembled in the garage and was waiting on Alex to give his final instructions, a speech, anything. They had come this far and were ready for any last encouragement before they faced the fight of their lives. Alex moved to face his team. All of them were lined up near the vehicles, decked out in ammo bandoliers, jackets to protect them from the rain, and enough weaponry for a small army. We all know the score, Alex started, making sure Brandon could hear him on the comm as well. In the next few hours, we'll be knee-deep in the highest pile of shit left on Earth. We're not a conventional team. Some of us would have been labeled heroes, rogues, and murderers. Many of us would have been enemies in another life, content to kill each other under different banners. All that ended when the old world died. Today, we're a team, and we've got to watch each other's backs like family. All of us need to trust one another to get us out of the tight spots we will run into. Anything less, and Morrison will have already won. Alex stopped and looked at the faces of every man and woman he had come to trust in the last month. They were here to fight for his cause, and if they all made it out, he hoped that one day he could repay that debt. The world might only know us as terrorists after today, but each of us will know what we've done, how we saved one of the last surviving bastions of humanity from repeating the mistakes of the past. The other nations will think long and hard before hunting any of us down ever again. Today, we fight our crusade, not as conquerors, not for religion, but for freedom, for revenge, to set our past right. Now let's go liberate our city. As the sun set behind New Purgatory's horizon, 3 BMWs moved out from Alonso's garage. Tommy, Otto, Dylan, and Ezra rode in the first car, while Alex, Layla, Tyler, and Janet rode in the second. Mikhail and Talia brought up the rear. Each was on course with Morrison's tower on what used to be Fifth Avenue. The three kept their pace below 45 miles per hour to navigate the wreckage and the riots. Streets are quiet, Alex said into his comm. Morrison has likely consolidated his forces. Small movements are enough to keep an already fearful population in place, Mikhail commented. Makes sense, Tyler said off the comm. Mobilize a shitload of armor, and the dominoes start to fall. Alex wasn't surprised either, but it would mean Morrison would have pulled soldiers back that he had planned on sending out to Queens. Likely not everything, though. Hitting his fuel store saw to that. Maybe that'll give us a chance. One more thanks I owe to the old man. The 3 vehicles neared the start of Fifth Avenue. All right, the tower is due south, Tommy started. No patrols in sight. Negative, Brandon came in. Patrols around the block, 5th, 34th, 6th, and 33rd. It's like a small train. Where are they now? Tommy asked. Coming round to 5th again. Give it a minute. Brandon replied. Alex got off his comm. Can you rig this car to blow open the garage before they come back around again? He asked Tyler. Already on it, Sentinel, Tyler replied. We've got our opening, Tommy. I'm pulling ahead. Slow up for the patrol. For the first time in years, Alex got a chance to look at the inner city's infrastructure closely. It was another world compared to the outskirts. What made it worse was that the rest of the city could have looked like this under a different ruler. The war hadn't broken them down, though. Morrison and his endless raids had. The window's open. Go, Brandon yelled. Alex chopped down a gear and accelerated hard past Tommy's car, not waiting for him to move out of the way. McHale's car moved to the outside, close behind. In the quarter-mile stretch, Alex geared the BMW in the red from 3 to 6, knowing it would be the last time the engine would ever roar. When the door was in sight, he spun the wheel hard to the left and pulled the handbrake, sending the car drifting towards the door until it screeched to a halt just a meter away. Tyler jumped out first and threw more of his stickers on the door, while Alex, Layla, and Janet took up position behind the car's body. Reckon you have another minute. They're moving quickly. Cameras must be in place, Brandon said. The other 2 BMWs were a slight pace up the road, waiting for the door to blow open, tires rubbing hard on the road as they waited to peel out. Tyler? Alex yelled. Wait, he called out, sweat dripping from his brow as he threw more stickers on the side of the car. As Morrison's convoy turned the corner, McHale and Tommy peeled out towards the door. The alleys! Tyler yelled as the team of 4 scattered in separate ways. They sprinted as far from the car as they could. In a flash, Tyler hit one of his many detonators. The BMW in the door went up in a fiery explosion. McHale's car went through first, catching the frame of the blown-out car as it landed and sent his car into a tailspin down into the garage. Tommy swerved and made it around safely. Tyler and Layla broke for the doors first, while Janet and Alex provided covering fire towards the oncoming vehicles. There were 3 carriers led by 2 jeeps. They both knew their fire could only cause the vehicle to swerve. They were too far out to hit the driver with anything less than a lucky shot. That shot came, but from above. The snap of a .50 caliber bullet rang out from a distance and crashed into the glass of the first jeep, sending it steering hard into the foremost carrier truck. This is our break, Janet yelled, running inside the garage. Alex let off a few more rounds at the primary jeep. The convoy had slowed to spill out troops and check for casualties. His last round smacked one of the Marines racing towards him. John Morrison heard the alarms blaring and watched his camera feeds that showed the exterior garage. The interiors were already offline, likely destroyed as the Crusaders entered. The Marines from his convoy were gathered by the entrance, hesitating to move through the smoke and into the crossfire. They'll be using the elevators, Morrison said, broadcasting to all his outpost hubs. Send the teams down to secure the garage. Trap them in there and end this. I'd give it about 2 minutes before they send someone through, Janet said as she trained her gun on the fiery entranceway. Otto was using his bare hands to force open one of the elevator doors. Finally, after a couple of hard grunts, they opened. Into the tunnels you go, Shadow, he motioned to McHale. McHale gave Otto a nod, and, in a moment, he disappeared deep into the inner workings of Morrison's tower. See what you can do to stall the troops coming down, Alex said. Fox, how many are you up to now? 5 and counting, Sentinel. They're moving in. All right, everyone up the stairs. Once we hit the 5th floor... He was interrupted by gunfire raining on their position. Move, Janet yelled, returning a volley of bullets back at their assailants. Alex took cover of one of the cars and lobbed a stinger towards the middle of the group. As the shards flew into the Marines, he and Janet took up the rear of the team, and they all moved up the stairs. Brandon had picked a nearby hotel construction site to be his perch. Many of the rooms from 60 floors below were already complete, but the top was still exposed to the rain outside. Fuck, he cursed to himself. Some of the soldiers were already in the garage and beyond his vision. That's when he saw 5 more carriers rolling in from the opposite sides of 5th Avenue. Oh, shit. Brandon went to sight down his scope when thunder rang out. He could feel the concrete he laid on vibrate next to him. When he looked to his side, he saw a collapsed rifle round embedded into the ground. Another sniper. They had only missed by a foot. Brandon brought up his own rifle and ran towards the cover of a steel beam, then began to trace his enemy's shot projection. He knew that only amateurs would hide in the tower. Whoever it was had half a brain and wanted to keep him away from taking out the ground forces. Another shot rang out, vibrating the steel beam. Brandon made a mental map in his head of the nearest buildings. The other hotel. That's where they're firing from. He didn't wait for another shot. Brandon stepped out and aimed at the rooftop. In his scope, he could see the other man hadn't been ready for such a brazen maneuver, nor Brandon's deathly quick and accurate aim. He exhaled and pulled the trigger in. As the bullet flew to its target, Brandon recognized the man's uniform. "Sentinel," Brandon said over the comm. "Go ahead, Fox," Alex said as he was backing up the stairs slowly while the team worked their way up. Occasionally, a pair of Marines would appear from below, but they had yet to be effective. "Hold," Alex yelled, seating himself at a flat area before the next set of stairs. "You've got 5 carriers worth of soldiers coming into the garage, but there's something else." "This just keeps getting better," Tyler said, spitting over the railing. "Stay away from the windows." Morrison called in Rangers. "I just killed one, but their sniper teams travel in groups. Until they're dealt with, I can't provide cover. I'm working on it." "Copy that. Do what you can," Alex replied. "Yeah," Brandon cut out through the static. "Morrison called in everyone," Janet said dejectedly while readying another stinger. "At this rate, we'll be out of these before we get halfway up." The conversation was cut short by the screaming of rifles 3 floors below. Janet tossed the grenade down past the railing and didn't hang around to watch it blow. The team kept its momentum, but Tommy slowed and looked over the railing. He saw Marines, too many to count, rushing past the limbs and blood of their dead, occasionally slipping on the stairs. "Holy shit," he said to himself. "Keep moving, Grease," Alex said, slapping the driver on the back. "This is nuts," Tommy replied as he continued his trudge up the stairs. In the back of his head, he was already formulating an exit strategy. The sniper honed in on a wheel of a troop carrier and fired. The tire exploded, and the vehicle went off course for Morrison's tower and slammed into one of the other carriers in the convoy. "He must have pulled back whatever was in the city, or the outskirts," Brandon said to himself. He could hear the thunderous sounds of other sniper rifles, but the shots came nowhere close to him. The Ranger snipers were either inexperienced, or they only had a general idea of where he was. Brandon scoped down his rifle, back towards the door to the garage. The fires there weren't deterring other troop carriers and APCs from entering. They'd already pushed past the flaming wreck of the BMW. The sniper ejected the clip from his rifle and reached for another in his pack. This one read and set it in the rifle. He pulled the rail back. The carriers moved slowly as they entered, giving him time to line up his shots. If one wreck hadn't slowed them, then maybe another would. He scoped down one of the carriers and aimed for the engine, and squeezed the trigger. With a boom, the round flew off, catching its mark in seconds, and caused an explosion. The carrier's rear flew up in the air and crashed into the top of the garage entrance, then rained down parts and bodies onto the entrance. The rest of the convoy slowed as the new fire began to spread. Brandon didn't waste any time firing his rounds into the stopped vehicles. The soldiers caught on quickly, running from their vehicles and into the building. Brandon created smoldering wrecks of the convoy using all the vehicles except the armored APCs. For now, that would forestall any other vehicles trying to get in. He ejected the explosive round clip and went back to his regular rounds. He turned his eyes upwards towards the other buildings surrounding him, actively looking for the Rangers that targeted him. It was like looking for planes in a cloudy sky. He sighed and focused back on Morrison's tower. The only thing he could do now was wait until the Rangers decided to find him, and hope they weren't as accurate as he was. The Shadow climbed 3 floors in the darkness of the elevator shaft, using the same rope the team would come up on. He shuttered his vision and enhanced his hearing. There was crude scrawling in spray paint that denoted each floor. 4, 5, 6, 11, 12, 13. Mikhail used the rope to swing his body back and forth towards the maintenance catwalk between elevators 1 and 2. With 3 total, he had to figure out a way to end the soldiers in each before they reached Alex's team. The Shadow waited for the first elevator. 2 were still behind. He had no time to calculate and hopped on top of the first as it lowered by the catwalk. Tyler's explosives were still in place, but he ignored them for now and instead reached for his pistol and opened the emergency hatch. The elevator stopped, and as the Marines inside went to look up, Mikhail fired 4 rapid shots, catching each soldier in the head. He closed the hatch and without hesitation jumped for the next catwalk a floor down, and then to the next elevator that had caught up. The drop was lower this time, and he could not avert the sound of his body slamming onto the roof. Shots rang up at him, but none penetrated. The Shadow pulled a stinger from his pouch and rolled it down the hatch as he made for the next catwalk. The last elevator still hadn't come down. Mikhail jumped for the cable and slid down, shifting his vision to heat. As he stared to the bottom of the shaft, he saw that it had already reached its destination, Floor 1. With all the soldiers he could see pouring in, using the hatch would be suicide. Instead, he began his climb back up the rope again, searching for a way out of the elevator shafts. "Sentinel, you must blow the shafts," Mikhail said. "What?" Alex yelled back over the comm. There was heavy gunfire in the background. "I was unable to stop all the soldiers in the elevators. The third is loading troops. They must be destroyed or you will be overwhelmed." Mikhail spotted an air duct along the nearest maintenance catwalk and ran for it. "What about you?" Alex asked. "I will survive." "What floor are we on?" Janet yelled, firing shots towards the lower stairs. 8, Talia called out. She and Otto were suppressing the entrance to the floor, while Ezra, Janet, and Dellen slowed the Marines that were trudging up the stairs. Alex looked over at Tyler, his expression hard. They hadn't got far, but they were already getting sandwiched in. If soldiers started coming in from the side, they were done. "Do it," Alex said. Tyler was tense and looked down at the detonator, then pressed down hard on the remote. There was no rumbling, no explosion, nothing except the sound of more bullets. 2 exceptional shots from the floor's doorway caught Tyler in the shin and his chest, bringing him to the ground. "Shit!" Tyler yelled out. Alex leaned over the ledge and fired off a volley of shots, too angry to care if he hit anyone. "Grease, Bones, help me get him up. We can't keep climbing, we need to take this floor," Alex yelled. "I'll take point," Otto called back, blindly shooting his rifle around the corner. "I'm with you," Ezra called back. Ezra and Talia switched places while she raced down to help suppress the rising Marines. Ezra put his back to the wall and glanced at Otto. Through the convict's white tank top, he could see blood seeping through. "Your stitches," Ezra began. "Shut up," the convict replied. "Follow me." Otto unslung the minigun from his back and rounded the corner of the hall. It needed no warming up as it began spraying bullets into the rushing Marines. Ezra used his foot speed to catch the ones hiding in cover, too afraid to poke their heads out against the meat grinder. "Reloading," Otto yelled, kicking in a door to a family's home and fed a new ammo belt into his gun. Ezra pulled out his scatter pistol and laid into the group of Marines guarding the elevators. They were exposed but had numbers. The bounty hunter rolled to dodge the oncoming fire and returned 2 wide shots of his own before slamming into one of the doors. There was a cracking sound in his helmet. He had been hit. Ezra pulled it off and saw a bullet had cracked the outer casing. Then he had an idea. "You ready yet, convict?" Ezra asked over the comm. "You dead yet, asshole?" Otto replied. "To them I'll be. Glance up, few rooms ahead." Otto could make out Ezra from his own cover. The bounty hunter was moving along the door, helmet in his left hand. The moment he raised it out of cover, bullets flew towards it, buying Otto precious seconds. The convict sprang from cover, rushing the Marines and firing countless rounds. He hit his marks, but not without taking a few bullets to the legs and chest. The Marines were felled in a neat pile of blood, but Otto himself could no longer stand. "Fuck," he said, falling to his knees and spitting up blood. With one arm, he used the minigun to keep balance, and then heard footsteps behind him. "A shame, Otto. I would have enjoyed the challenge of putting you in this state," Ezra said, gliding around the convict one step at a time. The bounty hunter's pistols were sheathed in their holsters, but he had picked up a fallen Marine's rifle. "I'll settle instead for ending your life." Ezra raised up the rifle and aimed it at the convict. Otto forced his head up and smiled through bloodied teeth. "I'll see you soon," he forced out, spitting hard at Ezra's face, but only hitting his boots. The bounty hunter fired a shot and then tossed the rifle aside, watching the blood drain from the man that had set him on this path. I think not, Ezra said, smiling to himself. This will be easier than I thought. Floor is clear, Sentinel, he said into the comm. Copy that. We're coming, Alex called back. After a few moments, Ezra watched as Alexander and Tommy pulled Tyler along, while the rest brought up the rear. What the fuck happened? Janet screamed, looking at Otto's corpse. Lucky shots. I tried to draw them off, but he rushed them. God damn it, Uncle, Janet trailed. Janet, we need to move now, Layla called out, pointing her gun towards the stairs. That stick on the door won't hold them for long. Ezra had already smacked the call button for all 3 elevators, then remembered one would likely still have Marines inside. Cover the doors, the bounty hunter yelled, reminding the rest of the team. The first 2 opened empty apart from the bodies. One was clean, the second bloody and trashed by the explosion of a stinger grenade. Everyone trained their guns on the final door, expecting Marines to come out blazing. When it opened, there stood the Shadow, brandishing his bloody blade, corpses on all sides. I had to improvise. What happened? Mikhail asked calmly. Something with a detonator. The explosion of the stair entrance cut Alex off. He pulled Tyler into one of the elevators with Layla's help. Janet covered them with her rifle. Go, Mikhail yelled to the rest of the team as the Marines started to come through the door. Ezra, Dellen, and Talia took the second, but Tommy was frozen, raising his pistol to shoot at the Marines. Janet and Ezra hammered their respective buttons, sealing the doors for their ascent. Mikhail put his back to the hallway and glared at Tommy, who looked back to see if the other elevators had left. 2 shots caught him in the leg, bringing him to a crawl. Mikhail turned the corner and fired a fallen Marine's rifle to buy Tommy the time he needed. When Mikhail shot a glance back, the last elevator was gone. Only a trail of blood and a jarred door to mark Tommy's presence. The Shadow fired several more shots and then tossed a flashbang. He dashed for the elevator cable and snagged it as the light exploded down the hall. As he looked up to begin his furious climb, he noticed the elevator was not above him, but below. Tommy? Tommy, where are you? Gambiani ripped the comm piece out of his ear, cutting Alex off in the process. The entire mission had gone fucking crazy. Too crazy for what he had been promised. It might have been worth doing for others, but he had no intention of dying and not being able to collect his pay or keep his life. At least I'll get all the spoils. He imagined what he could fit from Alonsfo's into the hell chopper. He'd have to get his leg right first, but he knew a few doctors in the outskirts. It wasn't like any of the team would be able to stop him. Crazy goddamn idiots, he groaned, looking down at his leg. He felt like he could barely lift his leg as he rested on the blood-stained floor. He assumed the first bullet must have smashed the bone in his thigh, while the other took out his shin. His only hope was that the Marines had filtered out of the garage so he could hobble to a car and leave. As the floor slowed to 1, Tommy prepared himself by lifting his half-empty pistol. When the door opened, he was met with smoke and darkness. Damn, Mikhail must have cut the fucking power, he said to himself, forcing his body up onto his good leg. Tommy hobbled out of the elevator with one arm holding his pistol up and the other pulling on his wounded leg. Once he reached his car, he dropped the gun at the passenger side and fell into the driver's seat, closing the door and locking it behind him. For a moment, he took a deep breath and exhaled. He was going to make it out of this mess, just like so many times before. Just have to get out of the patrol zone now. He fumbled for the keys in his pocket and turned the ignition, and then flipped switch for his lights. The garage illuminated around him, and he saw that the darkness had concealed the platoon of Marines surrounding him on all sides. Oh, fuck. The Marines reacted quicker than Tommy's dead leg could hit the gas. They fired round after round into the glass, spraying Tommy's blood inside the cab. The soldiers marched on towards the elevators and stairs, leaving the driver slumped over his center console. Brandon tried to keep up with the team as they changed floors, but it was getting harder for him to keep track as the Ranger snipers dialed in on his location. They were all firing sequentially now. It pushed him back to the completed portion of the hotel. He managed to find a room that overlooked the same area as the roofing and smashed open the solar glass with the weight of his rifle. When he peered down his scope, there were still a few soldiers pushing into the garage. Brandon did his best to end them quickly before he gained a realization of what was going on. The snipers were likely feeding the soldiers reports about his location as well. Not much time then. The sniper ran over to the exposed stairs, setting tripwires over several sets of stickers. The sound of gunfire from the roof caught him by surprise, and then he recognized the familiar buzz of a hell chopper. Fucking Rangers brought their own toys. Brandon kneeled at the bottom of the roof entrance with his sidearm and waited. The first Ranger moved in carefully, and the ice fox clipped him, sending the man rolling down the stairs. The others were more careful, laying down suppressing fire that forced Brandon back into cover. Without a good angle, Brandon reached into his coat for a flashbang. He tossed it and ran back to the hotel room he was using. He kicked the door shut and locked it, and then began moving furnishings to block the door. It wouldn't buy him a lot of time, but maybe enough to see the others get through. He reached for his rifle and scoped down on the solar glass of the tower. "Shit, Alex. Didn't think it'd end like this, huh?" Tyler said. "It's not over, Ty. Not yet," Janet responded, trying to keep pressure on the wound above his hip. "Fucking detonator. I'm sorry. I knew I rigged them too fast, but..." Tyler pulled his backpack around and grabbed the safety lock detonator. "Tap that, and you turn this place into the world's largest sparkler." Alex noticed that Tyler had been carrying more explosives in his bag. Stickers, C4, stingers, and other grenades. Had he been shot in the back, the mission would have ended that much quicker. "Why are you giving this to me? You're coming with us," Alex said. Tyler shook his head and reached into his bag again, pulling out his flask with wiring attached, running back inside to the explosives. "Not this time, Alex," his friend replied, twisting off the cap and forcing down the first drink he'd had in many days. "Got enough here to make up for my mistake. They won't be able to come at you from the ground anymore." Alex hung his head, then reached into his jacket for one of his last Ghana cigarettes and passed it to Tyler. "You roll like shit," Tyler said, smiling. He took another slug from his flask, trying to enjoy the whiskey as it intermingled with the blood rising from his throat. Alex used his old flick lighter to fire up the cig. Tyler took a long drag and exhaled the smoke as the elevators came to a stop. All members of the team stepped out from both elevators. There was a moment of peace. They had gotten ahead of the Marines, though it was sure to not last. Alex looked back at Tyler while the rest of the team took a moment to breathe, reload, and mentally ready themselves. "End him," Tyler yelled out as the elevator doors slowly shut in front of him. Alex let out a sigh and saw that the other elevator was already progressing back down. He shook his head and glanced at his rifle. They had to keep going. Tyler laughed to himself as the elevator began its descent. He took another long drag off the cigarette and pulled from the flask. "To man's blind indifference to his fellow man," he mumbled in a sing-song voice to himself. Tyler wasn't sure if the dizziness was from the lack of blood, the amount of alcohol, or both, but he could still feel the inertia when the elevator stopped. "And a whole generation were butchered and damned." When the doors finally opened, he saw the packs of Marines waiting, stunned by the sight of the near-dead man. Tyler let out one final laugh before he ashed his cigarette in his bag and blew everything on the 18th floor to hell. Mikhail knew that cutting the power would have only worked for the bottom floors, as above him he saw the maintenance lights working in good fashion. Either Morrison was running power off emergency generators, or the power for different sections of the building was run on separate Cloudbreaker grids. It had meant sliding down to the basement level, past Tommy and Tyler's slow-moving elevators, but it was worth jamming some of the security doors and slowing down reinforcements. The rumble of an explosion did not bother him. It meant the explosives had finally done their job. He pondered whether he was to blame that they went faulty, or if Morrison had played them and they were disarmed. He let that thought flee. It was nothing compared to the elevator that was falling above him. Mikhail swung to one of the catwalks as flaming metal fell past him at terminal velocity, destroying the cable as it went. He was now cut off from regrouping with the team. If the Shadow wanted to catch up, he would have to do it via the stairs where Morrison's Marines likely laid in wait, trying to put out the fires. "Sentinel." "Go ahead, Shadow," Alex replied. "What is your position?" Floor 70, and moving towards the Diamond Villas. Elevators are down. I am afraid I have been caught at the place, though I checked the ruins' foundation explosives. They will still work when detonated, Mikhail explained. What about you? Alex asked. The fires provide no upward access via tunnel or stairs. I will do what I can to slow any lower stair marines, but I cannot get to you. What about the catwalks? Alexander, I feel I must apologize. This event was a direct response of my own actions many years ago. Mikhail, what the fuck are you talking about? Mikhail, Alex yelled. If you succeed, I hope you will seek me out again. Thank you for showing me what it means to live life, regardless of history. Or lack thereof. Mikhail cut his comm unit and made for one of the elevator doors, prying it open with his hands. The main floor was empty. He imagined it must have been 2 or 3. He had not stopped to check during his climb. As he made for the stairs, he could hear the yells of Marines above, attempting to clear the debris. Mikhail shuttered his vision to heat and saw nearly 30 or 40 bodies trying to access the blown-out floor, then came up with a quick idea. He grabbed his last stinger grenade and threw it in the air as high as he could, and then shot it with his pistol. The noise would bring the Marines down to his level while he made his escape. The shadow ran down the floors and made it to the now empty garage area. He shifted his vision just to be sure. There was one heat signature in the bullet-riddled BMW, but it was fading quickly. When Mikhail opened the door, he saw Tommy's body, skewered with rounds. He let it fall out the door and onto the concrete. The seat was covered in blood, and the corpse started leaking more as the wounds were face down. Coward. Mikhail entered the vehicle, slamming the door behind him. A moment later, he hit the gas and broke for the exit, leaving Morrison's tower behind. Brandon watched from his scope as the BMW sped away from the tower and around the now empty carriers. Fox to BMW, what the hell? Leave it alone, Fox, Layla said over the comm. Can you still see the villa? The sniper raised his rifle and fired a shot towards the upper floors, smashing the glass and giving him a view of the interior. Morrison's soldiers were rallying, running towards where the glass had broken, making themselves easy targets. He watched as bullets flew by them from behind, and they turned. Brandon took the opportunity to sight them down one by one. He breathed in and exhaled deeply with each pull of the trigger. The bullets stopped as the last one fell, and he saw the shadows over several people run past the window. I'm assuming that was you guys? Brandon asked. It was. Thank you for the assist, Fox, Layla replied. May not be able to help much more unless I deal with the Rangers. You're all getting too high up. An explosion rocked the door behind him, throwing him to the ground and knocking his rifle out the window. When the sniper turned, there were 3 Rangers behind him. Layla said something that he couldn't make out, with his ears ringing. His pistol was still in its side holster, too far away from reach. The Rangers could have just blasted him, but they were proud individuals. One came at him with a hunting knife. Brandon sidestepped and threw a hard punch at the man's jaw, then booted him out the window. The next 2 came at him at the same time, both with their fists. Brandon tossed a kick at one, but was clocked by the other. He took the punch hard, but managed to maintain his balance, throwing another kick to the other man. The second Ranger doubled over while the first went for his gun. Brandon rushed him and drove a shoulder into the man, sending him into a sharp edge of the furniture that went through the Ranger's chest. The sniper gave a quick glance towards the door, hoping to make his escape, but stopped when he saw a platoon's worth of men waiting for him, rifles raised. Brandon slowly turned back towards the final Ranger, who had his sidearm pointed at his head. On your knees, terrorist, the Ranger demanded. The Ice Fox took a deep breath and put his left knee down. I guess the score is finally settled, old man, Brandon whispered to himself, forcing himself up and into a sprint. The Ranger was caught off guard as Brandon's body crashed into his, with enough force to carry them both out the window from 70 stories above. The Ranger screamed, but Brandon continued to hammer fists into him as they both fell. Finally, the sniper let go. He ignored his fear as he went down floor by floor. He took a deep breath and thought of Nyala. He'd see her again, maybe. As the ground came nearer, He only hoped he'd bought his team enough time. "Alex, I can't get Fox back on the comm," Layla yelled. Alex was busy firing rounds into the Marines coming down their floor. "He's gone, Layla. The Rangers." Alex was cut off by bullets flying by them as he went to duck behind a bench. "There's better cover in the shops," Janet yelled, moving forward and rolling into one of the storefronts. Alex, Layla, Talia, Ezra, and Dellen followed her from the hallway, moving into two parallel shops. "Can't be many up here, but Brandon mentioned Rangers," Dellen said. "I can't believe he's gone," Layla said as she blindly fired her SMG over the windowsill. "It wasn't his time," Dellen said above a whisper, looking down at his hands. Ezra shook his head, hopped over the windowsill, and went into a roll, coming up on his knees. He lifted his scatter pistols and fired 2 shots into a group of Marines, each of the bullets slamming into them with a wide spread. When he was back on his feet, he ran behind the large water fountain in the center of the villa and took cover. "He's gonna get flanked," Alex said. "No, look." Dellen pointed to the shops across the villa. "Perfect spot to flank them." Alex gave the medic a nod and hopped over the windowsill himself, strafing fire as he ran. His shots weren't accurate, but they kept the Marines from storming in on Ezra, who was now pinned down. Talia moved behind Alex, not bothering to fire her own SMG. When they made it to the shop, he saw she was out of ammo and clutching her sword. "You won't get close enough with that damn thing. They'll shoot you down," Alex said as he lined up another shot. Janet and the rest of the team followed, catching the Marine group out of position on the sides of the fountain. Alex heard a hard clang of steel on steel. When he looked up, he saw Talia's blade stopping another, but this one looped around in a hook. Alex turned to fire, but the figure threw a kick to his chest and went to strike downward. Talia jumped after him, bringing her blade low to block the strike as Alex backed away. The offender had another blade strapped to his back. Talia recognized the sword in the enemy. The Marines were too focused on being flanked, which left her alone to deal with the warrior, Chinese in origin. "Honor God, ostentatious demon," she spat, swinging her blade again. The warrior caught her blade with his hook and attempted to pull it away from her. Talia used his momentum to drive a hard knee to his chest, then drove her sword through the hooked area and into his shoulder. Talia withdrew her blade from his body and sliced it quickly around his neck. When she turned, 3 more honor guardsmen were waiting their turn. Alex had seen enough from behind the shop and fired a round into the head of one of the unassuming warriors. Talia picked that moment to strike out at the other 2. They were quicker than the first man, but could not outmaneuver as well in tandem. They tried to rush her, but she deflected each strike, raising her katana from left to right until one hooked her blade again. She let loose her own sword and jumped back to the body of the felled guard, lifting his hooked blades and sideswiping the first to run after her. She caught him in the face and arm, ripping him and felling him, but leaving her open to attack. The final guard did not see Ezra standing behind him. With the pull of the trigger, it sent his brain and body flying to the floor and splattering on Talia's armor. "Swords," Ezra scoffed as he handed Talia a fallen soldier's rifle. Talia stared for a moment at one of the hooked blades. She dropped one and clipped the other to her belt. She took the rifle from Ezra and slung it around her back and gathered her katana. The villa was cleared for the moment. Bodies of soldiers polluted the walkways, and blood turned the fountain's shower red. "You said there's another elevator system, Ezra?" Alex asked, wiping his brow. "Yes. It can lead directly to his office with proper access," the bounty hunter replied. Alex looked over at Janet, Talia, and Layla. "Find the elevator system." He glanced back over at the bounty hunter. "Do you have access?" he asked. This was the moment Ezra had been waiting for. Alone with Alex once again, and this time he could beat him. Ezra extended an arm out towards the window. "I do." He watched Alex breathe in a sigh of relief as the man neared the glass. "I'll admit, Alex, I'm impressed you got this far. It's amazing being so close to an impossible goal, is it not?" Ezra lifted his gun to the back of Alex's head, not touching, but waiting. "We lost good people to get here," Alex said. "We might lose more. There's still ground to cover, and we haven't run into that group from the armory run." Ezra had forgotten about them. There would be no way to take credit for Alex's murder if the augmented soldiers were still alive. He brought his gun back down and set it at his hip. "Let's not keep them waiting then," Ezra replied. Alex turned around and gave him a nod, and then made off deeper into the villa. Dellen emerged from one of the shops, just out of the corner of the bounty hunter's eyes. "As if I didn't already know," Dellen said as he moved over to Ezra, grabbing him by his chin and putting a foot behind one of his knees. "I should have known when Otto was killed like he was executed, you stupid son of a bitch." The bounty hunter's heart was pounding. He had played his hand far too soon. He went for his gun, but Dellen was quicker, pushing a syringe hard into Ezra's neck. Whatever it was made Ezra weak almost instantly, but not before ripping his gun into his holster and letting off one shot that caught the combat medic square in the stomach. Ezra doubled over and began to twitch until his body went flat. Dellen fell to his knees, trying to hold his stomach, all the while knowing that the wound would be too much for him. "Dellen, what the hell?" Alex said, rushing to the doctor's body. "Sorry, mate. You didn't catch it. Couldn't have, really." The doctor spat as he coughed up blood. "Catch what?" Alex asked. Ezra had you. Lined up a gun to the back of your skull and was ready to paint the window with your brains. Something you said must have scared him," Dellen explained. "The soldiers from the armory. Shit," Alex said. "They'd just gunned him down too. He needed to be Morrison's last hope. My guess, anyway." Blood was running down from the sides of Dellen's mouth now. "Alex, you need to kill him. You need to kill him and get out. Do you understand? Your job isn't done when this tower crumbles." "What else is there, Del?" Alex asked. "You rebuild. You live your life. Then you help others. London, they'll need you. I have... Dellen tried to continue, but nothing came out. He coughed, tried to breathe, and then his eyes glazed. His body went limp. "Fuck," Alex said under his breath, reaching for Dellen's tags and pulling them from his neck. "I will, Del. I promise." Bones was gone.